Hi there. I'm just your average traveler who stumbled upon something extraordinary. Let me tell you about Fernando David. Once a Marine, Fernando traded his uniform for a set of house keys, starting with just one rental property. But Fernando had a dream: to revolutionize how we travel and own property. He founded Dream Vacations by PMI, turning one small rental into a hospitality empire. Fernando's secret? Treating every guest like family and every home like his own. His team mastered digital storytelling, making every trip feel like a blockbuster adventure. Fernando didn't just help travelers. He transformed overwhelmed hosts into thriving business owners. His travel agency bundled beautiful stays with affordable flights, making dream vacations a reality for thousands. Whether you're chasing sunsets or returns on investment, with Fernando, you've struck gold. Fernando David isn't just building a business. He's building dreams, one happy traveler at a time.
What's going on, my beautiful people? Welcome back to STR News and Digest, your go-to place for everything related to short-term rentals, travel, and the business of hospitality. Let me see what I'm going to do here. I got a couple of stories that I want to talk about, and 3 stories in specific that I want to mention. The first one is, if you are an operator, there's a specific way that Airbnb is looking at your listing in order to determine whether or not they should place you on that first page. And we're going to talk about some of this stuff that we found out, through our investigative work. Wait, I don't know what happened here.
Making dream vacations a reality for thousands. Whether you're chasing sunsets or returns on investment.
I can't. All right. I don't know what happened there. 1 second. All right. So we're going to talk about that. That's one of the stories I want to talk about. Second story I want to talk about is something interesting and some of the data that's coming out of the Winter Olympics as it relates to short-term rentals. The reason I want to discuss that is because here in South Florida and certain parts of the US and Canada and Mexico, something big is going to happen in the summer, and that is World Cup. And I think the lessons that are being learned in the Winter Olympics, we can apply them here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then the last story I want to talk about is the strategies that Airbnb is implementing going into 2026 and how we can take advantage of that as short-term rental operators. But before I get into that, I got some bittersweet news as it relates to where we are as a business. Couple of things, and the first big one is that after, I think, when did I hop on? At least 8 years now, right? 7, maybe 7 years around there. Effective March 1st, we're going to be switching gears from our PMS system. We've been using Hostfully for a very long time, and Hostfully has been extremely good to us. And in turn, if you watch this channel, you're a subscriber to this channel, I've talked a lot about Hostfully. But unfortunately, we're going to be shifting gears for reasons that I'll go into in the future, but it's nothing related to Hostfully itself. I still think that PMS system is one of the best PMS systems around, especially if you're on a budget. But we're going to be shifting gears and going to Guesty. Now, I'm a firm believer in the following, and I've said this a lot. Those that know me and those that follow the channel religiously have heard me say this, and this is one of the reasons why we're changing, right? I firmly believe that as a business, hold on a second, because I almost forgot to remind you guys, if you're watching, do me a favor. If you have any questions or comments, listen below. Say hi, tell me where you're watching from. And then as I go through, and if I spot the question, Lorena can highlight that question, I'll answer it. If not, at the end, we'll do some Q&A. But as I was saying, I'm a firm believer that as a business, you can never stop doing two things: innovating and growing. Because if it's a saying that I heard a long time ago, I don't remember who said it, but I've said this a lot, is if you're not growing, you're dying. And innovation is part of growth, right? Otherwise, you're going to get left behind as time goes on. And as a business, I've been in business now it's hard to believe that as a business, I've been in business, what is it, 2007, I think it was, 2006. And then as part of PMI, since 2017. So it's been a long freaking time that I've been in business. And there's a couple of things that we're going to be shifting at. Our tech stack is going to change to be a little bit more symbiotic, right? The tech stack that I want to shift to, it's going to simplify operations for us. That's one of the reasons why we're changing for Hostfully. One of the reasons is because with Hostfully, I have to have a lot of integration, right? There's a lot of integration partners part of it. That is, from a PMS standpoint, if I own a PMS system, that's the way I want to operate, because you really want to focus on one single entity. And I think Hostfully does a very good job at its core, the core job of being a PMS system, right? But there's a couple of things that need to be integrated into that system. Guesty is a little bit more a one-stop shop. Whether that's good or bad, it just depends on the individual and it depends on your goals. Sometimes trying to wear all hats doesn't work. And I'm a firm believer that most of the time it doesn't work. And I'm going to talk about wearing all hats in a second. But I don't think it works in general. Now, with Guesty, because they've been in the industry a long time and they have gathered the right teams in place, they're able to get away with a lot more than most people could, right? So anyways, I'm going to go into a lot more details in the future as to why we're going to Guesty, some of the stuff that we're going to be doing with Guesty, etc. Now, another shift that we're doing as a business is that, number one, I hired a CEO effective March 1st. He's going to take over. And the reason I'm stepping away from the day-to-day operations is because in the last 2 to 3 years, and I've talked about this endlessly on this channel, the short-term rental industry has changed dramatically. It has become extremely competitive. It's become extremely difficult to actually grow as a company because I'm constantly trying to, put out fires and work a lot in the operations side of the house, which is really not my forte. My forte is in sales and specifically in coming up with ways to stay ahead of the game. And I've talked about some of the things we're doing in terms of acquisitions that we were going to be focusing on, like buying land and developing these unique stays, buying small boutique hotels and motels and converting them into unique experiences. So that's where I'm going in terms of acquisition. That's where I'm going to be focusing on, is getting the investors in, getting the money in, finding the opportunities and taking advantage of what I believe, or taking advantages of some of the stuff that I have learned, some of the stuff that I believe in, and where I think the short-term rental game is going into, not only for the latter part of 2026, but into 2027 and 2028. So that's a big thing. On top of that, not only are we doing that and we're focusing on our own acquisition, we're also going to be separating from PMI in general. So this is going to be our last year as part of the PMI brand, but we're still sticking with the Dream Vacations and Rentals, right? That is my brand. We're going to stick to that. And we're going to, again, focus on, or me personally is going to be focusing on acquiring these smaller unit hotels, boutique hotels, motels, and specifically on these unique stays, right? Buying land and building these resort style cabins, cottages, geodomes, unique properties, right? Like what we did in Georgia, like my friend Doug did with the Highlands. That's where we're going. Anyway, having said all that, let's go. And as I touched on it before, one of the reasons why I hired the CEO is because I'm a firm believer that you as an owner of a business, you can't wear all hats, and you really need to rely on others that probably could focus on individual components of the business and allow you to spread your wings and do what you do best. In my case, that's going to be acquisition, spotting talent, and spotting opportunities to invest in. So anyway, now I'm not the only one doing that, because the first story we're going to talk about is Airbnb, right? I mentioned in the beginning that it's some of the stuff that Airbnb is doing and what they're trying to do falls in line with exactly what I'm trying to do with my business. But before I get into that, let me just check a couple of things out here real quick. Let me just say hi to a few people. Haas Premium Services. Okay, if you notice, I talked about Haas before. They are an affiliate of us. So in essence, we're one and the same. My team over at Watt Hustle, you got Julio, hi. You have Premium Miami, my media team. Love all you guys. All right, let me go into the first story, which is what Airbnb is doing, right? In 2025, Airbnb decided to relinquish that long-held identity as being a booking platform, right? They want to be more and be known more than just a booking platform. In fact, they're repositioning themselves to be a full-scale travel and lifestyle ecosystem. And it's designed, and the way they're looking at it is that they want to control or be part of the full travel experience when they have that guest. One thing that's very important for any business, right, is controlling your most valuable asset, and that is that customer, right? Customer acquisition is the most expensive part, the most difficult part of any business. And I've always said this: if you don't have a customer, you don't have a business, right? Same thing applies to marketing, right? The reason I put a heavy emphasis on marketing, the reason why Lorena and I created the Dream Media team is because or at least I fully understood and learned that without eyeballs, without attention, you're not going to have the necessary reach to get those customers that you need. Airbnb understood this. Airbnb understands this, and they've done a great job in marketing. Hence why now the short-term rental industry is often referred to as Airbnb, right? They're synonymous, right? When you look at a short-term rental, most people won't say that's a short-term rental. They'll say that's an Airbnb. That's all due to their marketing, and I tip my hat off to them, right? But now that they have the most important component of any business, which is the customer, now they want to take full advantage of that customer, monetize that customer as much as possible, but also in doing so, provide a better guest experience. And this is going to lead to something else later on. But if you are a short-term rental manager, specifically, I'm not talking about just the mom and pop operator, right? Specifically, if you are a professional management company like we are, guys, you really need to pay attention. You really do need to understand that shift is really consequential to you, because Airbnb is no longer merely a distribution partner or an OTA, right? They're the full boat, and you need to understand that, and you need to figure out ways to separate yourself and stand out, so and not be as dependent on Airbnb as many of you are. I mean, I've been preaching this forever, but it's more important today than ever before, right? Especially when, today every OTA, every travel agency, every short-term rental operator is competing for that traveler, right? We're competing for those dollars that traveler is willing to put out. So highly recommend that you start looking into what Airbnb is doing and try to figure out how you can implement those stages in your business. I've talked about it a lot in my business, so I'm not going to touch on it all, but I've mentioned this before, right? We're trying to bring as much things in-house so we can provide that one-stop shop for that guest. So that's going to lead me to this next story, and that is optimizing your listings and how Airbnb decides whether you're on that first page or not. And this is critical. If you're a short-term rental manager, you really need to understand this so you can explain this to your owners, because there are so many misconceptions on this, on how people show up on that first page on the listing. And there's two primary forces. The one that many people, well, let me take it back. The one that people that understand the industry believe is the primary source is pricing. Pricing does play a big role, but it's not the major role as to how you show up in a search. It is the major role on how a guest decides to book you once they see you, but they have to see you first, right? It's that search component that's extremely important. And I'm going to give you a number that's probably going to blow you away, because it blew me away. And that is that a couple of companies did a study, PriceLabs being the leader in it, and I'll read it from their study, right? Most Airbnb listings don't underperform because of price. They underperform because of their poor listing quality. I said this a lot before, guys. Long gone are the days in which you can put anything on Airbnb and it'd be profitable. Those days are gone. Whatever you put on Airbnb, it better be top notch, or number one, you're not going to be profitable. And number two, you're not going to be on Airbnb for long, because they will kick you out. Not just Airbnb, because everybody else is following suit. The same thing is happening for low performing properties on Verbal and low performing properties on Booking.com. And those are the three major players in this industry. So here's the stat that blew me away. 88% of listings have issues, and as a result, it's hurting their revenue and how they're being placed on the platform, right? And I'm going to continue to read. Most property managers assume that slower Airbnb bookings means pricing is off. In reality, at scale, it is usually the listing quality, not the price, that limits visibility. Again, I want to emphasize we're talking about visibility and not actually when somebody actually books your property. Because from a guest perspective, pricing is the most important component. From a listing and visibility component, the quality of your listing is the most important component. Hence why, throughout the years, Airbnb tried to reward those hosts that were going beyond, above and beyond, right? They started with Superhost. Then they realized Superhost is not directly related to the actual property, but the actual host. So then they switched, and then they added the guest favorite badge, which today the guest favorite badge is the most important badge to have. not only from a guest point of view, but also from Airbnb's point of view. Those are the properties that they are pushing to the front. Those are the ones that they're hoping people book, because they understand that those are the properties that guests have visited and liked and enjoy, and are more likely to come back and book. I can't express this enough, guys. You have to, in order to stand out, you have to provide top-notch services. Your listing has to be of high quality. I can tell you that right now in my business, this is one of the reasons why we're shifting, is because my biggest headache and my biggest struggle aren't with my properties. They're with the properties that I manage for other people, because other people are not willing to invest the necessary dollars into a property to make it top notch, especially my older clients, because they were used to making a good amount of money without having to invest some money into their property. But again, those days are gone. So that's my biggest struggle. Hence why we're being very selective in 2026 on which properties we're bringing on board. In fact, we recently, just like Airbnb did in Q4 in Spain, for example, they got rid of 86,000 listings, most of it having to do with the lack of, because of the new regulation. But they also were very aggressive in getting rid of properties that had low ratings or low rankings, right? We decided to do the same. In the last quarter, I've had some tough conversations with owners and had to tell them that we're not going to be managing those properties anymore, because if they're not willing to invest the dollars into them, then we can't manage them. So that's big, guys. The last story that I want to talk about, let me just check something real quick. Let me say hi to Verushka, Valentina. Let me see anybody else on here. Okay. The last story I want to talk about is about the Winter Olympics. Now, here's what's interesting, and some of the data that's coming out of the Winter Olympics, right? During the opening day, February 4th to the 9th, the Winter Olympics, short-term rental saw a drop in occupancy rates, but the revenues surged, right? And there's a reason why revenue is up, although occupancy rate is down. And here's what's happening. In Italy specifically, in some of the areas in that area surrounding the Winter Olympics, they saw a 24% drop in occupancy rates, but they got a 28% increase in RevPAR. And here's what's going on. And I've talked about this a lot, and even with my owners, because this is another area in which owners don't fully understand. Trying to predict how to price a property is like trying to predict the stock market, right? No one can do it. It's impossible to do. This is why having dynamic pricing or a pricing software like PriceLabs to help you give you the necessary data to price your property. And if you're not aware how a good pricing, dynamic pricing software works, it's based on demand, people. If somebody's looking at your property, or in your particular areas, if the increase of bookings increase in that particular region or area of property similar to yours, your daily rate is going to go up because demand is high. But if it's low, it's going to drop. It has nothing to do whether or not there's an event there or not. Now, the event is going to bring in people, but in this case here, that also brought in a large number of additional short-term rentals, right? Hence why that occupancy rate actually dropped, because there was a lot of rentals, right? But because of the demand, the pricing software understood that and actually raised the rates. So an individual, let's say if you normally made $1,000 in a month with a 80% occupancy rate, you can probably, based on the information that's coming out of Italy, individuals are still making that $1,000 or more, but with a much less occupancy rate. And again, it has everything to do with demand. It has nothing to do with the occupancy rate itself. It's how many people are going, how many people are logging in, and how many people are actually booking properties. If those numbers go up, your RevPAR is going to go up. If those numbers go down, your RevPAR is going to go down. So keep that in mind. Try to educate your owners on that. And here's what's important, right? I'm going to read a couple of things that that is coming out of the Winter Olympics, and we're going to see this even more for the World Cup. And here's what the study found out, right? Fans aren't coming for the one-night event. They're planning a full itinerary surrounding the events. So it's consider it like not like a traditional season. You want to consider it like if it was a separate season in itself. So I'm going to use Miami, for example. People are not just going to come here to watch one soccer match, all right, or one football match. They're not going to just do that. They're going to come here for an entire week, if not 2 weeks, and get the full experience of the World Cup. So that is going to allow you, and if you plan correctly, that's going to allow you to market to people before and after these events. So just keep that in mind, because that's very, very important. And that's something huge that came out of the Winter Olympics. And again, guys, study what's going on in the world. Try to extrapolate some of the data and try to figure out how you can apply that information to your business. Anyway, that's going to be it for me for today. Let me see if we have any questions. Is there any positive and negative impact on your customers after these changes? Actually, we're hoping it's going to be a very huge positive impact, not only for our guests, but for our owners. And here's why. Because we're going to have the ability to put everything under one umbrella, not separate integration pieces. It's going to simplify the check-in process. And the easier you make it for someone to not only book your property, but to check into your property, the better guest experience you're going to have. From an owner's perspective, the Guesty owner app or link, because you can either download the app or use a link, it's much more robust than the one for Hostfully. So you're going to have the opportunity to get data that you currently can't get from Hostfully, like your RevPAR, like occupancy rates and all that. You're going to be able to see that. And in the owner's report, it's going to be simplified. It's all going to be under one umbrella, where if you needed to search for a specific owner's report, let's say a year ago, it's easier. You don't have to go through every individual report. And even for us, for my staff, that makes it easier for us. So when an owner requests something, it makes it easier for us to search it, search and find it. So we're hoping, again, I haven't used it, so everything in theory is great, and people can pitch and say whatever they want, but until you put it into practice, you're not going to really know, right? Now, we did do an extensive search on this, research on this, talked to a bunch of people, and most of it with Guesty was positive. Let's see, any other questions here? We have, does Guesty work in Colombia, or which PMS system do you work in Colombia? Guesty does work in Colombia, but so does Hostfully. I'm going to be fair. So does Hostfully, but Guesty does work in Colombia. But the other primary reason why, not primary, but another huge reason why we're switching to Guesty is because of Colombia. So for 2025, we took a big step back in Colombia because there's a lot of things going on in Colombia related to short-term rentals. In addition to that, we're struggling with our co-hosting business in Colombia because most properties that are hotels and larger unit apartment buildings that have been converted to short-term rentals, they operate with a software called SiteMinder. And SiteMinder can't integrate with Hostfully, but it could integrate with Guesty. That was a big selling point for me because now I can go back and reopen the Colombian market because we, in essence, had closed that and are just operating in a small footprint there. But now we're going to be able to reopen it because now we can have a direct connection with these other hosts that were hiring us to help market their properties from here in the US. Having said that, if you are an operator in Colombia or any other parts of the world and you need help marketing your properties and get more US visitors to your area, reach out to me. Let's partner up and let's work at that together. In addition to that, let me take this opportunity to ask anybody that knows of or is selling a boutique hotel, a 4 to 15 unit apartment building. If you know that and you know it's a good deal, send it my way because we're heavily going to be investing in that in 2026. Let me see if anything else. All right, my beautiful people, I don't see anything else. Thank you guys for watching. Next week, stay tuned. I got a lot more information I'm bringing on during next STR News and Digest. If there's a question you have and you want me to, or a topic you want me to discuss, put them in the comments and I'll bring it up during next week's live stream. Love you guys. Have a good evening.
Stuck at zero with your short-term rental? Watch Sarah go from overwhelmed host to marketing pro in 60 seconds. Meet Sarah, drowning in a sea of confusing marketing tactics. But everything changes when she discovers from zero to pro. She masters SEO, skyrocketing her visibility online. Social media becomes her secret weapon, turning scrollers into guests. Email marketing? Automated and personalized, working while she sleeps. With her own booking site, Sarah waves goodbye to hefty OTA fees. Sarah's not just growing, she's scaling, from one rental to an empire. Now Sarah's not just a host, she's a digital marketing pro with a thriving business. Ready for your zero to hero story? Get from zero to pro today and scale your rental empire.